Have you ever noticed how a single careless sentence can quietly destroy a man from the inside out without anyone throwing a punch? Some of the most dangerous words a man can say sound wise on the surface but are actually built on fear, ego, and stagnation. If you've ever said something and felt the sting of regret just seconds later, this video is your mirror, and it might not be kind. Some men don't need enemies to destroy them, they do it themselves, slowly and silently, one careless phrase at a time. Not through violence or brute force, but through language that sounds bold, confident, even wise, yet underneath it all is just fear wrapped in laziness. You've heard these phrases before, the kind of lines that reveal a man who stopped growing, stopped reflecting, and started drifting. The Stoics once warned us, speech is the mirror of the mind. So when a man speaks from a place of ego, excuse, or resignation, his words aren't just idle noise, they reflect a deeper surrender. In this video, we're not sugarcoating anything. We're revealing 6 things that foolish men say, phrases that eat away at your discipline, dissolve your dignity, and quietly dismantle your self-respect. And here's the key. These aren't just words. They're signals either sharpening your soul or selling it off, piece by piece. We'll also show you the Stoic alternative, because the right words can forge you into something stronger. If you've ever spoken and instantly regretted the weakness behind what you said, this is going to hit hard in the best possible way. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment. I'd rather be silent than sound like a fool. Now let's break the silence before your words do more damage than your enemies ever could. First phrase, that's just how I am. At first, it sounds decisive, almost noble. But deep down, it's pure surrender, not to wisdom or principle, but to stagnation. This phrase is often used by men who confuse being unchanging with being strong. They stop evolving. They stop questioning themselves. They dig in and stay in the same place year after year, convinced that being immovable means being grounded. But it's not strength, it's just ego hiding behind a mask of consistency. I knew a man named Carl. He was a retired Navy officer, always sharply dressed, 70 years old, and the kind of guy who could command a room with silence. But those closest to him knew the truth. He was emotionally stuck, frozen in place. Every time his wife asked for more connection, more vulnerability, he'd reply with, "I'm not built like that." When his son tried to talk through past wounds, Carl shut it down with, "That's not how I do things." Over the years, his relationships quietly crumbled, not from fights or conflict, but from stillness and neglect. Nothing changed, nothing moved, and in time, nothing remained. When his wife left, she didn't shout or slam the door. She simply stopped waiting for a man who refused to grow. That's the danger of this phrase. It sounds like conviction, but it's really a prison sentence dressed in fake strength. Stoic philosophy rejects that kind of self-abandonment. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And that hits harder the older you get. Life doesn't stop shaping you unless you stop listening. And here's the truth. Many men, especially as they age, start confusing experience with wisdom, but the two aren't the same. The last line reminded us how clinging to a fixed identity can quietly erode a man's growth. Now, let's turn the lens toward another illusion this time, the lie that silence is strength. A man who keeps repeating the same tired excuse becomes nothing more than a statue of himself, hardened, immobile, forgotten. A Stoic doesn't wear identity like a shield. He reshapes it, constantly sharpening it through awareness and wisdom. He listens not because he's weak, but because he knows each day offers another shot at refining who he is. Discipline isn't about freezing in place, it's about choosing growth over ego. The man who says, "That's just how I am," isn't standing tall. He's slowly decaying. His words become clipped, his thinking more rigid, and his life shrinks down to nothing but repetition and resistance. And when the world around him changes, he's left behind, clutching a hollow phrase while others have quietly moved on. The Stoic doesn't grip his identity like a weapon. He sharpens his soul with truth. He adjusts, he evolves not for the world's approval, but to answer the demands of his own inner spirit. And if that first phrase didn't shake you, the next one might go even deeper. Let's talk about the man who hides from life by masking avoidance as toughness. Real men don't talk about feelings. That's the second most dangerous phrase. It's one of the most damaging hand-me-downs passed from father to son, friend to friend, generation to generation. It masquerades as strength but is built from fear. Research from the American Psychological Association confirms that men who suppress emotion are more prone to depression, heart disease, and even early death. Yet the lie persists. It's worn like a badge of honor by men who think shutting down is a sign of control, but what they're really doing is locking themselves in an emotional bunker, hoping the storm will pass if they just stay quiet. But storms don't pass, they build. What starts as silence turns into simmering resentment, confusion, and emotional decay. Over time, it erupts as anger, addiction, or complete emotional disconnection. The man who buries his feelings to earn respect is unknowingly burying himself alive. Stoicism is often misunderstood here. Many hear, "control your emotions," and twist it into pretend they don't exist. That's not Stoicism, that's denial. The ancient Stoics never taught emotional suppression, they preached emotional clarity. Marcus Aurelius, arguably one of the most powerful men in history, didn't hide from his feelings. In his private journals, he wrote openly about grief, fear, and failure. He didn't deny them, he studied them. He named them so they wouldn't control him. That's the essence of Stoic strength, not silence, but self-awareness. A Stoic doesn't fear emotion. He fears becoming a slave to feelings he's too afraid to face. Emotional maturity isn't about sobbing in public. It's not about numbing out either. It's about pausing long enough to ask, what am I really feeling right now and why? It's about choosing clarity over chaos, reflection over reaction. And the man who masters faith's not avoiding a storm. He's learning how to walk through it with calm, deliberate steps. We just uncovered the lie that silence equals strength. Now, let's step into another trapone that infects a man's mindset like rot beneath the surface: the refusal to take responsibility. If you can't admit what's happening inside you honestly, quietly, ruthlessly, then you'll always react from impulse instead of clarity. The men who bottle up their emotions are often the ones harboring the most pain. They think that hiding their cracks will shield them from harm, but those very cracks are what let the light in. The real strength lies not in denial, but in the courage to speak not as a victim, but as someone in full command of his voice. The man who never speaks about his inner world is often the one most ruled by it. And when you stay silent with yourself, someone else eventually has to live in the shadow of your unspoken truth. Stoicism doesn't demand your silence, it demands your honesty. You don't have to break down in front of strangers, but you do need to stop pretending you don't feel. Because the next phrase, that's where blame begins to rot everything a man could have owned. Once that rot spreads, no honor remains. Let's talk about the man who uses four simple words to dodge responsibility every single time. It's not my fault. At first, it sounds like a defense, but beneath it, it's an open confession of defeat. This is the voice of a man who's handed over the keys to his own life, who walks around convinced that life just happens to him, that he's always the victim, never the cause, never the solution. And that mindset doesn't just steal his pride, it sterilizes everything he touches. The Stoics knew this was the first step toward decay. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them." In other words, your circumstances are rarely the real enemy. It's how you interpret them that either gives them weight or strips them of power. And no mindset is more poisonous than the belief that someone else always holds the blame. The man who keeps pointing at the economy, his boss, his past, his ex, his enemies, or fate itself, isn't explaining his struggle, she's surrendering his power. Even worse, he loses the ability to hear the one voice that matters most, his own. Marcus Aurelius made it clear, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. A man who refuses to see that truth isn't stoic, a prisoner of excuses. Blame is easy. It's a reflex for the lazy. Responsibility, though, takes structure, discipline, and the bravery to stop waiting for apologies or ideal conditions. It asks just one piercing question: what can I control? And the answer never changes your reaction, your direction, your discipline. Older menthos who've lived through hardship carried scars from loss, betrayal, failure. They know how deep the wounds can go. Many of those wounds weren't self-inflicted, but dragging them around like they're a free pass to stop growing, that's not wisdom, that's cowardice in disguise. The Stoic never denies injustice, but he refuses to live in permanent reaction to it. Seneca put it best, "A gem cannot be polished without friction." And the same goes for a man. If you want to shine, you've got to stop blaming the hammer and start embracing the grind. Before we move on, remember this. Accepting responsibility for what's in front of you, even when it's not your fault, is where true strength begins. Now let's talk about the next subtle trap that leads men down the road of mediocrity without them even realizing it. It's the belief that you're entitled to more than you've earned, wrapped in the confident-sounding phrase, "I deserve better." At first glance, it sounds like self-respect. But more often than not, it's just quiet arrogance, cloaked in the language of victimhood. It's the voice of entitlement, whispering through disappointment and frustration, telling a man that the world owes him something greater, without him ever doing the hard work to earn it. You've heard men say it, maybe even said it yourself. I deserve better. But here's the hard truth. Those who say it loudest are often the ones doing the least to improve themselves. They're not grinding in silence. They're not refining their character. They're simply waiting for life to hand them what they believe is theirs by default. That's not Stoic strength. That's just disguised laziness. Stoicism teaches you that life owes you absolutely nothing. Dignity is not something granted to you because you ask, it's something cultivated through consistent effort, with or without applause. Marcus Aurelius didn't ask the universe what a good man looked like. He told himself, do not waste time wondering what a good man should be one. That line slices through entitlement like a blade. It calls you back to the one thing you can always control: your actions in the present moment. The man who clings to the phrase, I deserve better, is usually doing less than he imagines and expecting far more than he's earned. He's traded discipline for complaint and effort for expectation. That kind of mindset is poison to growth. A stoic man doesn't walk around with a list of what he thinks he's owed. He walks with quiet strength, with purpose, with the willingness to face hard things without demanding applause. Epictetus put it perfectly. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's the Stoic way. It's not loud, it's not boastful, it's deeply personal. It's the internal commitment to growth that needs no outside validation. But here's the part most men miss, especially as they grow older. When relationships start to falter, when their careers stall, when recognition begins to fade, the phrase "I deserve better" starts to creep in like a shadow. And instead of asking themselves if they're still growing, they blame others for not seeing their worth. But blaming others doesn't make you valuable. Living with virtue does. If you find yourself saying, "I deserve better," stop and ask, "Am I still sharpening?" Because that's the real question. Not what you think you should have, but whether you are still doing the inner work to deserve anything at all. Seneca warned us, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And one of the greatest wastes? Spending precious time demanding rewards for efforts never made. A man of depth, a man with substance, a man shaped by Stoic wisdom doesn't shout into the world about what he thinks he deserves. He looks in the mirror and asks, "Am I becoming the kind of man I admire?" Because that single question demands honesty, humility, and accountability, and it roots you in the process, not the prize. So when life doesn't hand you what you hope for, don't fall into the trap of complaint. Rise with discipline, lead with character, and trust that your real worth is forged not in what you say you deserve, but in how you choose to grow. After blaming the world and demanding rewards for efforts never made, what often comes next is far more subtle but equally dangerous. It's the quiet withdrawal of a man who still shows up on paper but is already checked out in spirit. Let's talk about that next phrase, the one that signals a man has stopped leading and started hiding behind the bare minimum. "That's not my job." You'll hear it in workplaces, in homes, in relationships. And on the surface, it sounds like a boundary. But underneath, it's usually just a retreat. Not the kind of retreat that regroups and regains clarity, but the kind that avoids discomfort by refusing to go beyond what's required. Men who live by this phrase slowly shrink themselves. They believe doing the minimum is wisdom. They confuse disengagement with emotional health. Over time, their presence fades until all that's left is a man who exists by obligation, not by conviction. They check boxes, not hearts. They follow assignments, not purpose. I remember a man named Rye, a machinist from Pittsburgh. 30 years on the line, never missed a shift. Always punctual. But at home, different story. Dishes? Not his job. Helping his teenage son figure out college? Not his job. Talking with his wife about anything deeper than surface-level logistics? Definitely not his job. He believed showing up to work and paying the bills was enough. That doing the bare minimum made him dependable. But when his wife finally left after 28 years, he sat in his kitchen alone and said, "I did everything I was supposed to do." And maybe that's true, but he never asked what actually needed to be done. He just followed his checklist. That's not leadership, that's quiet abandonment. The Stoics never called that noble. They didn't settle for duty alone, they aimed for purpose. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What is your vocation? To be a good man." Not a man who hides behind tasks or job descriptions, but one who notices the gap and fills it. One who steps up when no one else will. One who chooses usefulness over comfort. Real strength isn't about doing what's written down. It's about doing what's right even when it's inconvenient, even when nobody's watching, even when you're not getting credit. Because when a man only does what's explicitly asked of him, what he's really saying is, I don't want to be bothered with responsibility. He's not protecting his time. He's surrendering his power. The Stoic understands that true influence doesn't come from what you avoid, it comes from what you embrace without being told. And once you start outsourcing your effort, your value isn't far behind. People stop depending on you. They start working around you. Your presence is no longer a strength, it's a liability. So, before you say, that's not my job, ask yourself, is this an act of strength or an escape from discomfort? Because real leadership isn't about doing everything. It's about doing what matters. And often, that means stepping outside your comfort zone. Now, as dangerous as that phrase is, the next one is even more insidious. Not because it limits your actions, but because it drains your spirit. It's a phrase so casual, it sounds like acceptance. So peaceful, it sounds like wisdom. But it's neither. It's a surrender disguised as calm. It's the line men repeat when they've lost their hunger to fight for what could be better. And it goes like this. It is what it is. Let's break that one open next. That quiet phrase, it is what it is, might sound harmless, even peaceful. But as we just saw, it doesn't just reflect resignation, it breeds it. It's not stoic strength, it's subtle surrender. One of the clearest signs of learned helplessness in adults is verbal resignation, the moment a man stops believing his choices can shape his reality. And no phrase signals that inner collapse more clearly than this casual shrug. It is what it is. At first, it might sound detached, maybe even philosophical. But dig deeper, and you'll find it's anything but. For many men especially, those worn down by years of failure, rejection, or disappointment, this phrase becomes a quiet funeral for their willpower. It's not wisdom, it's withdrawal. The Stoics never taught surrender to life. They taught engagement. Yes, they reminded us to accept what we can't control, but they never once told us to give up control over what we still can influence. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That wasn't a poetic metaphor. It was a command, a call to action. But when a man leans on, it is what it is, as his response to everything, he's not leaning into stoic composure. He's leaning into emotional numbness. And numbness, when dressed in calm words, can fool even the man saying them. Seneca sharpened the warning further. He wrote, it is not that we have a short life, but that we make it short by wasting it. And this phrase, it's not just a waste of time, it's a slow erosion of conviction, a quiet burial of effort and courage. What's worse, this mindset doesn't stay contained. It leaks. It seeps into relationships, ambition, health. A man who stops choosing his response, who stops examining his emotions, becomes a bystander in his own life. Detached, passive, slowly fading into irrelevance. There's a stark difference between composure and capitulation. Stoic composure says, I see this clearly, I accept it, and now I act with purpose. But capitulation? It says, I see this, and I give up. One sharpens you, the other sedates you. A true Stoic doesn't whisper, "It is what it is," and check out. When life punches him in the gut, he doesn't numb out, he examines. He doesn't rage, he responds. Not recklessly, not dramatically, but with intention. Because life will hurt, people will fail you. The world will refuse to conform to your expectations, but that's never an excuse to rot in your own passivity. So the next time you feel this phrase crawling up your throat, stop. Ask yourself, is this really Stoic acceptance, or am I just too tired to care? Because every time you surrender to that tiredness, you make yourself easier to forget. And one day, you'll wake up not respected, not feared, not even disliked, just ignored. And for a man once capable of greatness, that is the cruelest fate of all. Now let's end this with clarity. Because now you know the 6 phrases we've uncovered aren't just bad habits. They're corrosive patterns. They eat away at your power, your dignity, your impact. And once you see them for what they are, the real question isn't, what's wrong with me? It's, what will I say instead? Every man leaves a legacy. Sometimes in action, sometimes in silence, sometimes in the words that slip out when he's not trying to impress anyone. These 6 phrases, they're not just empty talk. They are weakness in its most distilled form. And if you say them long enough, they won't just reflect your mindset, they will become your identity. But here's the good news. That identity isn't final. Not unless you're too afraid to confront it. Weakness was never your true enemy. Denial was. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And that color, you choose it every time you open your mouth. Once you recognize that your words reflect your mindset, there's only one direction left: to speak with intention and reclaim your inner authority. So if you speak like a victim, don't be surprised when life treats you like one. But the moment you begin to speak with clarity, even when no one's watching, even when it's just you and the silence, something shifts. You're not just fixing your image, you're rebuilding your character. In character, it's what remains when the noise fades, when the applause dies down, and when no one is left to impress. A Stoic man doesn't speak to sound smart. He speaks with purpose. Every word, every pause, every silence is deliberate. His voice isn't used for decoration, it's a tool for discipline. And when he chooses not to speak, that silence isn't empty. It has weight. It has gravity. It draws people in, not because it's loud, but because it's anchored in truth. Too many men fill the air with noise, opinions, complaints, excuses. But the wise, they wait. They watch. Then they speak with such intention that the world leans forward just to catch what's said. That's the kind of man the Stoics were calling us to become: loud but clear. Not reactive, but measured. Not desperate to be heard, but disciplined enough to stay silent until the right words come. So if anything in this video hit a nerve, let it. Don't flinch. That discomfort you feel right now, that's not weakness. That's the spark of growth. It means part of you is ready to evolve, to trade the easy phrases for stronger ones, to stop sounding like someone surviving and start sounding like someone leading. From here on, your challenge isn't to memorize Stoic quotes or pretend you've got it all together. It's to begin every day with one simple aim. Speak like the man you're becoming. Choose strength over sound. Choose clarity over chaos. Because you're not here to be another voice in the crowd. You're here to become the voice others listen to. And now, as we wrap this journey, ask yourself, Which of those 6 phrases have I been repeating? And which one will I replace starting today? The world doesn't need more noise. It needs men of substance, men of silence when silence serves, and men of speech when words can heal, direct, or empower. This path, it's not for everyone. But if you've made it this far, it's for you. So step into it. If you found value in this, subscribe to the channel and like this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us which phrase you're letting go of and what you're replacing it with. And don't stop here. Dive deeper into the lessons that forged unbreakable minds across centuries. Explore our playlist, Stoic Wisdom, Mastering Emotions and Inner Strength, and let it sharpen the edges of your discipline. At the Stoic Room, we're not here to escape pressure, we're here to transform under it. Until next time, stay calm, stay strong, and keep walking the Stoic path.